In the wonderful Netflix series Stranger Things, a love triangle plays out between Jonathan, Nancy, and Steve. In this video, I'll discuss whether their relationships follow the common "give geeks a chance" trope. This is where a geek, a socially awkward, unpopular person, ends up dating someone who is higher on the social ladder than they are. We've seen this trope fulfilled over and over again in American films like Revenge of the Nerds, Can't Hardly Wait, and She's Out of My League. But does Stranger Things fall victim to those same cliches? Before I answer that, I just want to give everyone a quick spoiler warning. I'll be discussing events from the entire first season, so if you haven't watched them all yet, do so and come back after. In the beginning of Stranger Things, we learn that Jonathan's parents are divorced, that he works to help support his family, which is being raised by a single mother, and you would be more likely to find Jonathan brooding in his bedroom than at a party. Considering the way he interacts with people, the clothes that he wears, and the way people look down on him at Hawkins High School, it's safe to say he doesn't fit in with the crowd. In contrast, Nancy is getting invited to parties, she's meeting new people, she has a very strong friendship with Barbara, and she's excited about her budding relationship with Steve Harrington. In the beginning, Nancy has no romantic interest in Jonathan. The third member of the triangle is Nancy's love interest, Steve. Steve is popular, wealthy, obnoxious, and a bully. We are led to believe that Steve is only interested in Nancy for sex, and then plans to move on to the next girl. So all this is a great setup for the give geeks a chance trope. It even includes a douchey boyfriend, which is really common. But how does it play out? At Steve's party, Jonathan invades the guests' privacy by taking photos of them from the bushes without anyone knowing. This includes intimate moments before Nancy and Steve have sex. When Steve finds out, he's understandably angry. He outs Jonathan in front of Nancy, calls him a pervert, and breaks his camera. However, despite all this, Nancy and Jonathan begin working together to search for Jonathan's missing brother Will and Nancy's missing friend Barb. As they search for answers, prepare for the worst, and help each other through horrific circumstances, the two begin to learn more about each other. They become closer, and an unexpected relationship develops. When Steve finds out about the two of them together, he reacts poorly. His friends and him spray paint Nancy the Slut Wheeler on the movie theater marquee, and he then antagonizes Jonathan into a fight. So up until this point, the trope's playing out as it should. This would be about the time where the girl finally realizes her boyfriend is a jerk and runs away with the geek, the one that the audience knows she should have been with all along. But is that what happens in Stranger Things? At this point, you'd expect Steve to grow up to be what he was destined to be, a douchey, beer-chugging frat boy with a popped collar, just like the two-dimensional stereotypes we've seen so many times before. Yet, he doesn't. Steve begins to realize how his actions have affected others. He calls his friends out for being jerks, he goes to remove the spray paint from the marquee, then goes on to put his feelings about Jonathan aside so he can help fight the monster. Steve shows remorse and tries to fix his mistakes. By the end of the season, Nancy isn't with Jonathan, she's with the cool guy Steve. This would lead most people to say that no, Stranger Things doesn't fulfill the give geeks a chance trope, that our expectations have been subverted. They've taken a tried and true formula, turned it on its head, and given the audience something refreshing. And that's somewhat true, but I would argue that it still fulfills the trope, if you look at it from Nancy's perspective. Nancy is the geek, not Jonathan. Nancy isn't very popular. She's more of a well-behaved bookworm type who's focused on her studies. She isn't the outgoing party type. Even her best friend Barb is worried she'll forget about her when Nancy starts spending time with the cool kids. Steve is the cool one who's higher up on the social ladder than Nancy. He's the one who realizes Nancy, the geek, is actually the one worth being with, not those other girls he slept with. Jonathan is really more of a brooding, misunderstood social outcast than a geek. If this were, say, Pretty in Pink, he wouldn't be Blaine, the guy who gets the girl. He's more along the lines of the Ducky character, the awkward friend who has a crush on a girl but only receives friendship in return. Steve is really the Blaine character in this comparison. And look how far Steve has come by the end of the season. Sitting on the couch with Nancy, wearing an awful 1980s Christmas sweater, he asks her if she gave Jonathan the new camera for Christmas. Steve comes from a wealthy family, and I think there's a good chance he actually paid for the camera himself. He is, after all, the one who broke Jonathan's camera in the first place. I see the gift of the camera as a sign of forgiveness from Steve to Jonathan, not from Nancy to Jonathan. It's there to say that despite how Jonathan spied on his girlfriend during a very intimate and private moment, and although they fought one another, he still forgives him. This shows a lot of maturity, a lot of growth from Steve. So for those of you out there who are feeling disappointed that the geek didn't end up with the popular one, don't be. The popular, Steve Harrington, realized that the bookish, geeky Nancy Wheeler was the one worth dating the whole time. And that's who Nancy's in love with, not Jonathan.